Take Review, where four college professors talk film, providing insight, not assigning homework. I'm your host, Jen Sobchak Bankard, and I'm here with three panicky government officials. First, he's got bad knees, so don't ask him about his jump shot. It's PT McNiff. How's it going, PT?
I'll listen to this podcast, and the gal said, we're four college professors talk film, providing insight, not assigning homework. I don't know why Idris Elba became Australian, because I don't really know how to do like a
I thought that was
London
Russell
accent.
Crowe. Like, what's going on?
Well, but it was good for an Australian accent, but I couldn't. I was trying to do him trying to hide a British accent, but doing American. Anyway, I'm doing
and
great,
now you've
Jen.
over-explained it. It's fine.
I'm doing great, Jen. How are you? Yeah.
And he's got a tiny dinosaur in his pocket. It's Greg Cass. How's it going, Greg?
Hi, Jen. I have a joke for you. How do zombie missiles navigate?
I don't know, Greg. How do zombie missiles navigate?
How do zombie missiles navigate? How do zombie missiles navigate? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have a punchline prepared. I'm good, Jen. Good to be here to talk about a really interesting movie to talk about.
Wow, shots fired and not the ones in this movie. That's great. And last but not least, he can tell you what he knows, but it's his day off. It's Antonio Alfano. How are you doing, Antonio?
Sandwich or oatmeal. Anything else holds up the line. I'm doing great.
That is what Antonio says right before we start recording every episode, ladies and gentlemen.
We all choose oatmeal. It's always oatmeal.
All right, dear listeners, those were all references to the film we are here to review today. Catherine Bigelow's latest work, A House of Dynamite, now streaming on Netflix. You would never know that was the title by watching this movie whatsoever. If you are listening to us for the first time, we'll have a spoiler-free section designed for those who have not yet seen the film, and then with the very clear alert, we will shift into spoiler mode for the rest of the show. PT, if listeners think we're worth watching over and over again after listening to this episode, what can they do?
Yeah, if you saw that ball game last night and you can believe that Lindor, then why don't you follow the Long Take Review wherever you get your podcasts? We host the feed on Jen's Substack at thelongtake.substack.com, but you can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Overcast, YouTube, and many more. Wherever you get podcasts, you can find us. You can also follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at the Long Take Review, and we are also on Letterboxd. The account is at LTR Pod, or you can search for the hashtag LTR Pod to see what each of us individually has been watching.
Hey, Jen and Antonio don't know this, but we're not going to have time for a movie news update this episode. However, PT was recently a guest on Rebel Base Card podcast with me and my co-host, Greg McLaughlin, and we talked through our thoughts on this crazy movie story about Steven Soderbergh and Adam Driver putting together their own Star Wars movie that Disney rejected. It would be a fascinating conversation here, but we already had it somewhere else. So find us on the Rebel Base Card feed. That's my plug. If we do it at the end of the episode, nobody ever hears it. So it's in there early. Jen, please continue with the episode.
Fair enough. Those are good points. That was big movie news. We never do movie news anymore because people complain our episodes are too long as it is. You brought this on yourselves. All right. So we'll start as we always do. Thanks, Greg, for that plug. We'll start as we always do with the short take. Well, what did everybody think of A House of Dynamite?
I'll go first because I was sort of in the middle on this, and I don't want to force people who felt maybe more extreme. I think that this was a movie that had some very effective, pretty effective at least, individual moments and sequences that ultimately kind of falls apart and fails at what it aims to do. I did sort of think about this on my own, but I want to credit Sean Fantasy from The Big Picture for saying something similar. I was listening to their reaction episode earlier today. It's a movie that has heard about Rashomon and was like, that sounds good. Let me try that. But it failed at executing what makes that movie both effective and also a classic. So it tries to give you like different perspectives, but instead of each perspective adding new information to what you had, it just is like, what about these people? And so I think that it doesn't succeed at what it aims to do. Though in isolated moments, and especially the first time you see the events that happen, it's Catherine Bigelow is very good at building tension and getting you invested in the energy of a moment. So yeah, this was a real mixed bag for me overall. Greg, what did you think?
This was a huge disappointment for me. So, before I went with full Josh O'Connor, hype draft, this was on my list because I saw the cast list for this. I saw the premise for this, which if listeners haven't heard, this is just, what's in essentially the logline in the trailer. This movie starts with the missiles being launched, and it's how the government reacts to an incoming nuclear threat. That sounds fascinating. I have never for 1 second disliked Rebecca Ferguson on screen. I have never for 1 second disliked Tracy Letts on screen. Anthony Ramos is also here. And I will just say, I was so hyped up for this, and I found it hugely disappointing. I had the good pleasure of knowing that Antonio had already seen it. So even before I stood up from my theater chair, I was texting Antonio and just saying, what the hell? So we'll get into it, but I was very disappointed by this film. Antonio, who diplomatically responds to text from Angry Greg at like 11:30 at night. What were your feelings on this movie?
So I'm the highest on this movie, but I will recognize all of the flaws of the film. For me, the movie has a very clear objective to explain in granular detail what happens in the event of a potential nuclear attack, and I think the movie succeeds in that objective. What other movie this year is going to spark op-ed pieces from like military experts? I saw one from a U.S. senator the other day about what this film sort of pretends and what's the message it should be, telling us about the way we should be governing and how we should be handling nuclear war, like the threat of nuclear war. Now, to PT's point and Greg's point, I think about everyone's point about the overlapping 3-act structure and whether it works. I think there are clear like diminishing returns with each section, and I reviewed it first. I saw it first, and I acknowledge that while still giving it a positive review. I do think the last act, though, for me was the only actually like bad one. I was actually quite riveted in Act 1, and then intrigued by certain elements of Act 2. And just in the course of the movie, learned a lot that horrified me in the course of 2/3 of a gripping movie, and that was enough for me. Jen, what did you think?
This is possibly the most disappointing movie for me this year so far. And the delta for that is so large, I think, because on paper, this seems like exactly the kind of movie I would love. Where it's tense, it's a political thriller, it's a process movie, where it's sort of like you look at all the unsung heroes, though I guess there are no actual heroes in this movie, and that's maybe part of the problem. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like all the people that don't get named in the history books are doing their jobs and they're working hard. And so like part of the appeal of this movie to me was like, oh, this sounds exactly what I would like, because it is kind of that intense process-based political thriller, not unlike The West Wing, a show that when it aired was one of my favorites. And I love a good walk and talk. I love a good office banter, like a lot, you know what I mean? Like all that kind of stuff. And so this movie seemed to really have that kind of promise to it. And I got even more excited when I realized that this movie was going to do sort of the Rashomon style structure. Because I'm like, oh, that's going to be like an interesting new twist on this type of movie, right? But there is zero payoff in the story. I just felt like this movie fell completely flat. Mostly because of the ending, but at no point did it actually, it had little glimmers of character development where like you'd meet somebody and they'd have like a quick exchange and that would kind of tell you something about the characters. But beyond that, we never got enough from any one of these characters, including the one that's supposed to be the most important, presumably, in a way that I would actually care what's happening. And then that on top of the just completely confounding ending that I just like yelled at my TV, and my poor husband John came in and he sat down, and it was in like the last like 10 or 15 minutes of the movie. And he's like, "Oh, what you watching?" And I'm like, "Shh." and
It's all going to pay off soon.
And then
Dude,
like I
watch
just
this.
threw my hands up, and he was like, "Wait, that's the ending?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "That seems like the beginning." And I'm like, "I know." So yeah, so really disappointing. And also, like, I'm a pretty big fan. I've enjoyed most Catherine Bigelow movies I've seen in the past. Like, so I was, for her name taking attached to this, plus the cast, as Greg I think mentioned, made me really excited. And so then to just be like, "Meh? What happened?" was very disappointing.
What do you think, Jen?
What
do
are
we
we-
have
what are we-
recommendations?
No, I recommended this to no one. I mean, like, is this
Do you at least
even...
want to play the sound? So
all right, fine. I'm all riled up now. I'm usually so nice. We're so positive on the show all the time. I don't like it when we have to be mean, but this is
Antonio's here to leaven us. He can tell us
okay.
the parts that
Yes.
remind us the parts that worked.
right. No, it's true. All right, where is it? Okay. All right. This is the recommendation algorithm in which we establish the audience of a film. Is that audience 0? I'm being unkind. But like, does this even work as in the background you're doing your laundry Netflix movie?
So I gotta say I do feel bad. Like I didn't dislike this movie as much as some other recent movies we've talked about, but I did only come up with mean things to say in the recommendation algorithm. And one of the ones, to your point, Jen, is if you have 2 hours to watch a movie, but you know you can only really pay attention for a half hour, and then you got to go do something in your house, and you just need it on in the background while chores are happening, have I got a movie for you? My other ones were, if you wish Dr. Strangelove wasn't so funny, or that Failsafe wasn't so serious, you can watch this. This kind of exists somewhere in the middle. And then if you're the kind of person who watches Missions Impossible or Jack Ryan movies, when the action stuff starts, you scoff and go, "That's not realistic." Or if you roll your eyes at any Aaron Sorkin written project that's set in Washington, D.C., whenever a minute plus monologue starts, then good news, you can watch this for only scenes that have no payoffs or peaks.
Wow.
Can't follow that. We can't follow that. Let's just go to spoiler mode.
Okay. Yeah. Let's just. So if you have not seen House of Dynamite, it's very easy to watch. It's on Netflix right now. You can just watch it at home.
Put in a plug. Antonio and I both saw this in the theater. I actually
Yes.
think it was worth seeing on the big screen for all my discontent. So that's my mini recommendation algorithm. If it's somehow still playing, because it was bigger and more exciting, and you're locked in, and you're not half looking at your phone, and your kids aren't around. And I was just talking to a really good friend whose husband wandered in for the last 10 minutes, and just like she had to explain to him what was going on. Like, that's just terrible. So yeah, go to the theater if you can. I think we're speaking a little bit in our big city privilege, but it worked on the big screen. Go ahead, Jen.
Okay. Turn back now if you don't want this movie spoiled. Now, if we've piqued your morbid curiosity, I feel like those are the people who are left at this point.
Again, Antonio legitimately liked it.
I know.
Like, I do want to
feel
emphasize that.
bad.
I have been mean, but he did like it and thinks it's
I've had
worthwhile.
a good cop on so many of these episodes. Just leave me.
So it's my turn. It's my turn.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
Okay, spoiler mode.
Is it a spoiler to say, like, the first act is really, really good? Like, it's incredible. I don't think anybody, even people who really don't like what happens in the rest of the movie, isn't locked in on what's happening.
Performances are excellent. For me, my favorite performance of the entire film was Rebecca Ferguson as Olivia Walker. I think
Undefeated.
that she's just so captivating and just so in control, and just in every register that she's operating in, her professional capacity and her personal capacity. She's just a welcome sight every time it cut to her. So yes, I agree. Like the first act of the movie, I think is absolutely brilliant.
I love in that segment the pacing of everybody kind of assuming it's no big deal or it's an accident, and then like the kind of repeated beat of like, oh, actually, no, there is something there. Oh, wait, no, it continued, and oh, that didn't work. And I really did love the tension across that section. And I will always sing the praises of Rebecca Ferguson. Again, maybe this is just Ilsa Faust got a job, right? Maybe she didn't die. She just got a desk job. Spoilers for Dead Reckoning, I guess. Hey, speaking of Dead Reckoning, guess what, Jen? That's how zombie missiles find their way to their target.
Wow.
Yeah, I would agree with what you are saying. Not the Elsa Faust part, unfortunately. She would never take a job this inside somewhere unless she had admission that was impossible to go in and mess something up. But apparently not. I will say, like, the fact that it was so good, where it was just kind of like, there's a system that's off, and the satellite's not doing things. Okay, I guess it is something, but like, it's gotta peter out. It's gonna land in the water. Like, what's the trajectory? What's going on? Like, all of that worked so well, and then once I didn't know, I don't know if other people did going in. Was not aware that it was going to be in 3 segments, and each segment was going to reset and start earlier. So when we reset, and it was like, oh, we're with the general in Nebraska, played by Tracy Letts, and we're with the young guy who had been in the Blair Witch Zoom that was like, he was moving his phone around. I was like, oh, that's fun. Okay. Like, I can't wait to see what additional information and what different kind of tension this movie will aim to build by going back through those routines that will be, separate from what we already saw. And it all is a beat for beat, all the same stuff. Like, I know there's different like elements mixed in, but to me, it was just kind of like, oh, like, nothing's different. Like, nothing is the details of what's happening has not changed for me from point to point. There was a little bit about the NSA deputy who's thrust into this, the younger guy, apparently from Hillbilly Elegy, a movie I didn't see, but I have heard a lot of people say this movie was like, part of their problem with the movie that's not related to the movie was them having to like tamp down their immediate thoughts on like, oh, it's JD Vance. Netflix's JD Vance showing up in this movie. But I thought that guy was great. I thought everyone was acting really well. And I was like, what's going to happen when he talks to Russia? And it was kind of like, I don't know, not much. Like, Russia says they didn't do it, but also that they're not going to agree to not do anything. So I don't know. It, like, the situation didn't change and the information didn't change. And so I know Jen is one of the people, and I think Greg as well, who they were really mad at the end of the movie. By the time we got to the end of the movie, I was like, I kind of don't think it's a bad ending in terms of like the choice of basically like, we're not going to show anything. But I was already just sort of like, I don't know why I watched beyond the first act. Like, that was great. And nothing was added in that made me like it more or feel differently about what was happening. So it was a inflation instead of a pop at the end, so to speak.
I want to turn PT's interpretation into a question for the other two of you. Can you imagine anything that was gained here that wouldn't have been if it was just all of the stories edited together as one? Like, what did the film gain from the 3 segments perspectives? Any ideas?
I mean, I think that part of the issue is that there's no more important time than like this 30 minutes, right? And to present that time in a 2-hour span continuously, I think that it would be, I mean, I viewed the 3 perspectives like this. Basically, I thought of it as sort of like the first act is kind of like defense. It's like, these are the things that we're going to do to stop the thing, and these are like the sort of precautionary measures or whatever. The second act I thought of as sort of like offense. All right, like, who did it? What are we going to do now? And what are the options for all of this? And then the third act, which was the worst act for me and I think for all of us, right? Was all right, and now it comes to the arbiter of deciding what to do and what the options are. And so I think that thinking of it in terms of like an argument, basically, right? And sort of like laying these things out and unpacking them in like, that's how I sort of file things away. And look, I like resolution as much as anyone, but I had resolved to myself by the time I'd gotten to the third act, I was like, there's no way that this is going to, like, there's no way that this is going to just, whatever ending it could be, whether it is a giant explosion or whether it's just like, oh, it's actually fine, or it didn't detonate or whatever, right? That was going to feel bad too. And I think that even if it had gone in a linear fashion and they had just stretched or it had just been like a 2-hour wait, I guess, for the missile to launch, I still think that I'm not sure what the ending of this, what a satisfactory ending to this movie is going to be. And again, I think the point was it's just sort of like we are on the like this is how close we are to this kind of like panic, right? And this is these are like these things. Only these things have to happen for all of this for all of this chaos to ultimately happen. And so to me, like it's just like maybe you don't like the thesis of the paper, but I think it succeeds in the thesis of the paper of like what it was at least striving to do. And on its own terms, like even as I admit that like from a narrative standpoint, there's a lot that you obviously are missing that you traditionally want out of an evening in the movies. I think it just does what it narrowly sort of sets out to do, what its mission was. And I understand why, if that's not enough for a lot of people who want, that rich emotional experience of like going to the movies and that satisfaction of like having, questions answered. But, we just reviewed a movie recently where we got lots of answers to questions that were real bad. Right. So, I don't know. Jen, what do you think?
So your defense is it could be worse.
Well, that's not.
No, I'm just
Go
kidding.
on.
I'm kidding. I have, despite my comment just now, I have calmed down a little bit, and I do think so. When I think about what this movie's trying to do, I don't know if it's wholly successful, but to me, the point was actually more to show that no individual person in their point of view and in their position knows everything that's going on, and that we all, to a certain extent, don't know what's going on. And this idea is literalized in the first two acts by the president being a black box on the Zoom screen, right? We only hear Idris Elba's voice. We don't see him. And I feel like that's a very heavy-handed metaphor for that. The response to a disaster like this, a nuclear attack against the United States, is largely a black box where things are in place and things are like mechanisms are set to go off when certain things happen, when we hit DEFCON 1 or whatever, right? But no individual person wholly knows what that is, right? We have people being pulled from their offices to be like, well, you got to go. You're a designated evacuee. And they're all getting on this mysterious bus going to some other place that we never get to see. And then like we have like the Secretary of Defense played by Jared Harris being like, it's a coin toss. That's what $50 million buys us, right? Like, cause so he doesn't actually know what's going on, and he's presumably supposed to. But I think the deflating thing, and again, this could have very well been purposeful, but I didn't find it from a cinematic perspective to be satisfying at all, is that when we finally do get to the third act and the black box is gone, and we presumably get to the center of power being Idris Elba's, I don't remember the president's name now. That's terrible.
He doesn't have a name. He's just the president.
He's just the president? Oh.
I think.
Okay. So yeah, we get to the president, who in theory should be the most knowledgeable or on top of things, because as he says many times, it is his decision about what to do about this, right? Ultimately from the diner menu that he has to choose how we react, either preemptively or wait and then potentially risk or whatever. And then it turns out that he doesn't actually know anything either, right? There's a dude who's been following around with a binder that he like has not paid attention to until this moment. And I get it. Like the point is that like none of us knows anything. So when this actually happens, we're totally screwed. Right. but I didn't like it. I didn't.
So my reaction to sort of like what both of you are saying, I appreciate Antonio's point of like, sometimes the thesis is only kind of whatever, but like it's, is it proving that thesis? I can see that, but in terms of both the like probably bad to have all these nuclear weapons, and also I guess we wouldn't necessarily know what to do even if we've trained for it, because the information would be hard to deal with, and also no one's really ready for how bad it would be if this happened. My like comment, my main comment on the paper at the end would be, so what? Be like, okay, so like what does that mean? Like what? Like that doesn't, none of that seems particularly insightful. It kind of just seems like, yep, That's right. We have nuclear weapons, probably bad. Like responding to disasters, hard to do. People sharing information, not really something that you can do in a short amount of time, even with all the tech we have. Oh, okay. I will just say that, Jen, the movie you were describing sounds like it could be really interesting. It also sounds like a farce or a comedy. And this movie is stone cold serious. For the moment, there's some funny little like asides and stuff. But this is like a very serious, like, can you imagine what would happen? And it's kind of like, yeah, I can. I don't know. I'm not surprised at any of this. Like I wasn't shocked by what I saw in this movie because it's like, oh my God, like really with nuclear weapons? Like this could be what happens? Maybe it's because I'm too cynical about all of this, but I'm just kind of like, yeah, I think we would screw this up. I think something bad would happen. And the diplomats would say we need to focus on diplomacy now. And the generals would say we got to focus on war now. And people in the middle would be like, I don't know. Let's ask the guy. And the guy's not actually ready because who can be ready to make that decision? So I don't know. Yeah, kind of so what? Like what? I don't know what this was trying to add to these core ideas in society. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe not everybody watches Dr. Strangelove every couple of years and is like, yeah, nuclear war bad. And so it is kind of like something to lock into. And if there are people who are thinking that, of course, everybody would know exactly what to do and we would be fine, we would all work it out, then it's nice. It's good to have their dreams shattered a little bit to be like, actually, no, we should be paying more attention to all this.
So I know I told you all, but I will tell listeners that I saw this at night, and then the next morning, Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning was on sale on iTunes for $10, and I hit that so fast.
Nice.
And so I basically double featured, and it's weird because the two movies oddly sync up, not just with some, but with some plot points and with this kind of general theme. And I remember when we reviewed Final Reckoning, which people can find anywhere on Jen's Substack feed, PT pointed out that when it all comes down in that movie to a really competent president making a really high stakes decision, it's like this, and it's I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the actress's name.
Angela Bassett.
Angela Bassett. Thank you. So when Angela Bassett makes the right decision, that moment reads totally differently now in a place where there's not, where if Kamala Harris had been president, that would have read much differently. When you have this in the place of an administration that seems to exhibit incompetence in a lot of day-to-day stuff, it read really differently. And that's how I read this. I mean, the theme of this year of government has been strip out the experts, get the loyalists in, and just emptying out places. Like I am a layman. I don't know for sure, but I feel like a lot of these listening posts have like a third of the staff they once did and so on. So that's not the film's fault, but it ends up to me being that the whole message by the end of the film is like, make sure you put competent people in charge of this, because even if they're competent, they might not get it right, or it's really hard and it's really difficult. And, I think part of the problem is how serious the film is, telling us the number of nuclear weapons and all of that. So I would say that to me ends up being like this film's message is like, when you think about like, what is the lesson of the last few decades, when you think about government, you think about the person at the top, but it's everybody, and it's all the agencies that are doing this. And that's kind of the message of what is he, the undersecretary or the assistant secretary, which they make it seem like he's like a bumbling like personal assistant who happens into that. He's clearly also high ranking, like being second ranking is not that bad, right? A deputy. But yeah, I felt
would
like
be like
that.
the Josh to the Leo in The West Wing.
Yeah.
But with the NSA.
Right.
That was my read on it.
Yeah, and he seems very competent. He just is very flustered because he's on a phone and trying to get
usually in charge,
which is, and also it's a terrifying situation.
Can I hear from some nominations for criminally underutilized cast members? I'll throw out Catherine
Where do we
Deaver
begin?
is in this for like what?
Oh yeah.
15 seconds, maybe.
They showed Jared Harris's desk, and I was like, the photo at the desk looks like Caitlin Deaver. Like that's weird.
Caitlin Deaver.
And then they cut to her having like 3 lines, and it seems like she's mad at him because her mom died. It was very like I understand they were trying to shorthand things, but it was a little bit like, okay. But I mean, this is the Greta Lee honorary award, right? For underused cast member in this movie.
She has to be on the phone during a Civil War reenactment, and also trying to supervise her child who's running around while she's trying to have a very important phone call.
Right, and chiding him for enjoying the event that she took him to. Like, don't be too excited that we're here. Like, you should be honored. You should be thinking about how costly all this was, but also pay attention to the big guns.
Which cast members do we think are innocent?
Greta Lee, she's not in it enough. And she's innocent.
Okay, yeah.
That same weekend in my movie watching, she was also innocent in Tron Ares. And what you just described, it's like, wait, I think that's basically the same part she's in, except instead of Confederates and Union, it's like programs or something. I don't understand Tron.
Right.
But yeah.
It's the digital Battle of Gettysburg that she goes to. I think all the actors are innocent, personally. Antonio, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tracy Letts is excellent as the general.
Always.
I think he's good. I think the actor that you were just Gabriel Basso is the name of the actor who plays the deputy
national
person?
security advisor.
To me, he was the MVP of Act 2. And that arc. I actually liked Anthony Ramos in the first act too, and that little crew in the first act. So there were some standout. I think there were some standout performances, and then we got to the fourth and to the third act, and I think all of the stuff with the president, and then the strange calls to the first lady, who is Angelica Schuyler, right? That's
Mary. Elise Goldsberry. Yeah.
Renee Elise Goldsberry.
Yeah, Renee Elise Goldsberry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that they do their best with the material, but it's not great. Right? That's not great.
What's happening with Idris Elba in this movie? Can we just talk about it? Like, is it just because his character's not good?
Yeah, I was gonna say
no
I think
British guy. Like, that's the 90% of the problem. Like, what do you know Idris Elba for? Number one, being British, right? So I don't get that.
Number one's The Wire.
On The Wire. Yeah, come on.
Let's say that. Number one is The Wire. Number two is being British. Number three is the people from Baltimore who cast him in The Wire didn't know he wasn't from Baltimore until after he signed his contract, because he was so good at the Baltimore accent. But he's not good at a presidential accent because he still kind of sounds British. There is this issue of major characters who are clearly supposed to be American. Jared Harris, Rebecca Ferguson, with all love and respect, who are not able to hold their accents in this movie. And that's, in a better movie, not a problem. I was never worried about Rebecca Ferguson's accent because I was locked in on that first part. But I do, like, once we get to Jared Harris as Secretary of Defense and Idris Elba as the president, and it's sort of like, why did we elect a British guy president? Like, why is this guy from London? Like, how did he get around? I mean, I guess I can see how all of the rules about being president in the Constitution may no longer exist in the future. And so we could just elect Idris Elba. That's fine. And I guess that if that happens, that's why when he enters into a public space, instead of Hail to the Chief, they play In the Air Tonight. That makes sense to me. It tracked. That was the part of part 3 that tracked. But, yeah, I think it's just that, like, it's this weird thing of the president's supposed to be super charming, but also, like, really green at some of this stuff, and also tired. It was all this, like, there was a lot of character packed in, and also that segment was carrying the weight of, like, okay, this is all going to pay off. So I think we also watched it waiting. I mean, I only watched it once. I don't know if anyone has watched it multiple times. But I remember thinking just sort of like, okay, great. He's tired. Great. His wife's in Africa. Okay, cool. Like, here's all this information and little character building. What's going to happen that's going to make this all worthwhile? And there's just that guy who's kind of like, we should blow everyone up. Here's the menu. Why don't we do it? Like, why don't we just do it? And it was like, okay. And then we don't know what he chooses.
I think it's also a more difficult task in that particular act for that particular character, because every other character leading up to then has like a very specific role and has a very specific thing that they have to convey about what they are doing within the process. So while we're getting a little bit of dramatization sometimes of like what their family's like and their concerns about what else is going on in their life, someone's about to propose to their whatever, right? Like, at the end of the day, we're still very focused on the procedural aspect of what they are doing and how they are a part of this larger process. And then in the last act, it's just like, okay, here's all the information. You've been presented to it in two different ways, in two different acts. And now you're in the position of the president, right? And he's got to just make the call now, right? And so I think that it's very difficult in the architecture of the film, in a 30-minute span of us knowing him, for us to understand his style of governance and all the things that could factor into him ultimately making the call that he has to make. So then, in substitute for that, we just have him having a conversation with someone like, "Oh, how would you handle it? What's this, whatever?" And it just seems like, what's going on, right? Like this, he seems like that's not what you ideally want in that particular situation. But again, it's again, I think part of this is, even though this is sort of like built into like the argument of the film, and in theory, like sounds interesting, sounds like it could work. It does put, in terms from a dramatic standpoint, it puts a near impossible task on that third act, and on a fine actor to dramatize like a situation that can't really be unpacked in a full way in that 30 minutes, right? I mean, even those little things that I'm talking about, those little granular details, are like pretty complicated, but they do a pretty good job of sort of like summing it up, and for us to sort of like understand each individual argument about like, Greta Lee, you tell us about like Korea, right? And all this. But and now we have the president who's just going to what? Who's going to synthesize everything and turn it into something, and he can't.
Yeah, I also like I understand what you are saying, and I think it does narratively make sense. I think that everything in the movie, even the choice at the end to not show what happens, I think all makes sense on paper, but I don't think it really worked in execution. What, like, something that like I was kind of bumping up against, that I was just like, how like, I understand his sort of like, I had all these meetings about like how I'd nominate a Supreme Court justice, but like I've never talked about these options. And apparently that is true, that every president since after Jimmy Carter has never sat through that briefing. They're always like, I'm not going to do that unless it comes up. So like, I like, that's great, because it's bad because that's awful, but it's great in the movie because that means it's reality. But I didn't believe that in the moment. I read it later. Okay, credit to Catherine Bigelow, credit to her sources. Condolences to all those people that exist on the internet who are mad at her for just making military industrial propaganda, says the Hurt Locker. But that connection and information that she has gave some real verisimilitude to that, even when I didn't see that. That said, the thing I kept bumping up against was one where it was like, I could see how this is realistic. I can even see how this is true, but it didn't make sense to me narratively. Was the reality of the situation being, there's this missile, we missed the launch, we don't know where it came from, we have no potential idea who shot it. We only have a certain number of minutes until it's going to land, and it's going to land in the Midwest, it's going to land in these places, it's going to land in Chicago as the trajectory gets clear. And before it lands, we have to decide whether we're going to attack everybody who might have fired it, and everybody who might be mad at us. And I can see that, like, the Tracy Letts character, there's always the general that's sort of like, if not, this wouldn't be a preliminary attack, or I'm not thinking of the right word, but the moving first because it's in reaction. But it also is just sort of like, everybody's getting it. We're all just, everyone but us is going to blow up. I didn't buy the ticking clock element of, if we let this bomb fall and we haven't already launched, we've surrendered to everyone. Because it's like, I don't think every country that didn't shoot this missile wouldn't be like, yo man, what happened? Like, what's going on? Like I maybe I believe too much in diplomacy, and I'm with Brasso, our deputy NSA guy.
The character's name is Jake Barrington.
Okay, Jake Barrington.
Gabriel Basso is the name of the actor.
Right, Brasso is a real hero of a man from the Andor TV series.
I was just getting excited because I thought you were talking about Andor.
but okay. Jake Barrington. I'm more on the side of Jake Barrington, but it's also kind of crazy. That's like, okay, we called Russia, but we had, North Korea, we had Iran, we had Pakistan. We had all these other countries that we were like, well, I guess we have to attack all of them, which I'm sure is attack plan C or whatever on the thing, the baggie that you open up. But yeah, I think that became the issue, like because it's not as clear in the first part that that's really the debate. That's the debate of the second part. And I kept waiting for the moment when it was like, oh, I guess the case will be made for why that, like, it has to happen now. We can't wait like 20 more minutes to figure out what happened and target the actual enemy. Especially whatever. Yeah. In a century when famously attacking the country that didn't attack us was like a thing we did and caused a bunch of problems, that we would still do that with nuclear weapons. But I don't know. I think that was fundamentally what threw me off. And then neither the end of part 2 nor all of part 3 helped me understand that or gave me additional information to make it not just seem like we made a ticking clock and we have to decide to attack before this missile lands. The end. Anyway, how does other people feel about that?
I was just going to say it's because the entity breaks in 20 minutes, but I think I was confusing the movies again.
So you're making me think that maybe part of the reason my reaction to this movie is a genre expectation problem, because I think everything we've been saying so far is pointing towards the sort of like cynicism, but also kind of desperate, bleak, like the desperate outlook or panicked outlook of like. And I think I've seen interviews with Catherine Bigelow where she has said that this is what inspired her to make the movie, where she learned that, like, you know, we are wholly unprepared for something like she did research, started doing research about this, and was like, and this is something that zero people think about day to day, but when it happens, we're all going to have to think about it and we're not ready. Right. Or something like that. So to me, if you set this up as a structurally intricate ticking time bomb, suspenseful procedural thriller, I know that was a lot of genre labels to mix together, but if that's what you're giving me, but the point is to be like, we're all going to die, and isn't that terrible? I feel like that's a mismatching of genre with purpose, because I think for me at least, when I'm watching this type of movie, or the movie that I was led to believe from the first act, I want there to be more of a, we're just gonna try our best, and everyone's trying to help, and ultimately it's gonna matter somehow, even if everybody dies anyway. You know what I mean? Like it's like a more kind of like heroic ending, even if the ending is bad. And that is the more cliched version, but I think it is the version that, like, the type of story that goes much better with the style of storytelling that this movie uses. I don't know. Yeah.
Let me articulate that using your first comparison, which is, you know, one of the things that people call West Wing is competency porn, right? Because it's good people with good morals doing your job. This ends up feeling like incompetency porn, right? Where it's like, these people are perfectly competent, they're getting it done, but as an entity, the government is failing in this. Not that entity, but as an institution, the government is failing. So as we're watching that fail, it does go against every feeling we have in movies, right? We think Ethan Hunt or fill in your superhero is going to save the day and cut the red wire just with 1 second remaining. And since we don't get that kind of conclusion, I think, you know, obviously she knows what she's doing. Bigelow knows what she's doing when she breaks those rules to make it a very clear message. I think the complaint that PT has aired, and I would also air, is that the message is made in the first 5 minutes. It's like, oh yeah, we're not prepared, or we understand that these people need to be high level and they aren't right now. That's really upsetting. Oh, there's really nothing else that you're saying. You're just saying it kind of over and over again, despite the best efforts of everybody involved. If we're not ready, we're not ready. And yeah, it's gripping. I mean, I guess my question, I would pass it around to the group, is, do you think everybody's reacting so cynically to this, or is this like, are we in a bubble of like Oscar loving film critic types, and then most people cranking this up on Netflix this weekend are like, hell yeah, this rules. Like this was so awesome. I can't believe that they didn't even tell us what happened. That was awesome. But do you think, I guess I haven't seen, I assume it's up high in the algorithm just in terms of number of watchers, but do you think people are satisfied with it?
I'm going to say no, because I think it's the ending. I don't know if they're like worried about the competency of, well, whatever. But I think that like, and maybe that is genre expectation. Maybe this is an interesting attempt at subverting that by just being like, yeah, tense, building up, going back, 10 cents, building back up. We're going to build up back the same moment. Oh my God. Like, can you believe finally, like, what's going to happen? Nothing's going to change. Like, nothing good will happen because like no one can do this. Like we've created a system that is impossible to sustain human life or be controlled by humans, and everything's just going to get out of control. And there's no way to show that without, there's no good way to show that. So maybe not showing anything and just sort of, hinting at a chaotic, terrified aftermath is the way to go. But I think for most people, they're going to be like, oh, that sucked because I wanted something. And I do think that the fact that like it isn't like we're at the moment when it's like you've got however many seconds, Mr. President, like what do you want to do? And then it cuts to black. It doesn't end. There is still a couple of moments, and those moments added nothing and kind of made it seem like I guess there's a part 4, and then it was like directed by Catherine Bigelow, and it was like, oh, what? Like what's happening? Then you hear some explosions, so it's like I guess stuff blew up. I guess maybe there's other bombs. Some missiles were set. I don't know. And so it like wants to be like ambiguous. It wants to leave it, but at that moment, but it also wants to creep over it just a little bit. And so I think that mix is not going to leave like the normies, as I know you meant to say, Greg. I don't think the normies are sitting there being like, hell yeah, unless they were on their phone for the last hour of the movie and were just like, yeah, that's cool. And then went back to whatever they were doing.
Then describe this as like a kind of procedural, and like what is more comforting on television than a procedural, because you know exactly what you're going to get, you know that there's going to be a set resolution, and you know you're going to get to a certain degree like people being competent at their jobs. And so I think what is startling, again, I think effective about the movie is showing, I thought like for the most part people being effective in every single phase of their job. And in fact, I think there's even a line of someone said like, we did everything right. We did everything by the protocol. Right. And it's still, failing. And then and so, what you expect in the course of a procedural is someone does something, they do their job correctly, and then it fixes it, or it fixes at least an aspect of it. And then, we're moving closer and closer to progress. And so to have the opposite experience where just like everyone's doing their job correctly, but the process is just a bad process. And even though you have all of these seeming sort of like safeguards and these really smart people along the way, it's if the process is bad, then it's just not. It ultimately won't work out. And so I understand that that's not going to be a very satisfactory thing, like for a moviegoer. And even I, who liked the movie, still at the ending of the film, like left feeling like ugh. And I'd even taken like a friend who didn't who like went to the movies, like the last time they went to the movies was like a couple of years ago, and he was like, huh, and I was like, yeah, that's how movies are now. But I think that one thing in the most recent op-ed about this that I read was the one by I forget which senator it was. I think a senator from Massachusetts, I think. But yeah, that's right. And the op-ed started with the premise that that people generally had this idea that like technology is at a state where they can prevent nuclear war. And so what this movie does is it dispels them of that notion. So it starts with this sort of fundamental assumption of like what the general population knows about nuclear war, and partially fed by like movies where like people save the day and like and do these things and do these measures that can protect the world, right? And so Bigelow's like, no, this is what the real thing looks like. And I've also read other pieces where people are like, "Yep, this is right," which also makes me feel very bad. But again, it's a sort of like, I understand that it's a sort of like ultimately a joyless, like, enterprise. But I still thought of it as just like, well, this is an important thing that they're doing, and an important point that they're making. And there are some things, for me at least, that I was like, I didn't understand this. Like, I didn't understand the mechanics of this, or that this was like, this was the sort of standard procedure, because it's like a thing that I don't want to think about. Right. So I don't. And I think that's the majority of people don't want to think about like what actually happens here. And would rather, obviously would rather have like some heroic person come save the day and fix everything. Or they just want like all out chaos and war, and just like that, and that be the start of the movie, not the end of the movie. Right. So, again, like, I was eager to come here today, not because like I thought I was going to change your mind and tell you like, well, actually, this is a really great movie, but because I don't know, we just did a panel about sort of like, what it means to talk about politics in the context of film, and what these conversations do. And 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 for me, at least, as someone who's like has been about part of this, for all of us have done this now for like a couple of years, like the process of like disagreeing with you all is just as pleasurable like now, because of how much I like respect you all, and like, having these conversations, as like agreeing, and like all of us being like, this is amazing, and like, and that. So, I don't disagree with like all of the criticisms about it as a narrative, and I understand, and it's valid to feel like totally disappointed by it, but I don't know, there's something just like the student paper that's just like, what, you did what you wanted to do here, and even if it's not something that I would ever want to read again, like, kudos to you for having the audacity to just sort of like do it your way, and executing it in the only way that sort of like made sense, given the terms of like your own vision.
I have one more question before we move on to what could be a very quick Oscars watch. Do you think there's a version of this movie, because I keep going back to this metaphor we've created about like, or the parallel with the student paper. Do you think there's a version of this movie that embeds in its storytelling a suggestion of how to fix the system? Because I think maybe that's what I'm dissatisfied with, is that it's not giving us anything, right? It's just kind of painting this very bleak picture and saying, look at how the system is going to fail, and how we're not thinking about this, and we really should be. This is a wake up call, right? Like, but for me, I feel like it's less compelling to point that out if you're not then also going to be like, so therefore we should make sure that all the competent, important people don't just get whisked away on a bus and then can't actually do their jobs, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, is there I don't need like a foolproof solution or something like that, but some inkling of it. Is there a version of this movie that could have had that?
I think the seed is there in the conversation with Russia in the sit room, right? That like, the only way out of this, and this is actually the same as Final Reckoning, but I understand that's a different movie, is like, you have to have cooler heads prevail. You have to have trust. And I think that is on a very specific level, but you can broaden that out from the way the movie deals with that. That's like, when we trust people to be competent and calm and figure things out, then it should work out. And I think, when it gives the numbers about nuclear weapons, it really is making an argument for non-proliferation, which is, some major steps were taken under the Obama administration in that regard. We had secret teams going into failed Soviet states and securing nuclear weapons to have them destroyed and so on. And that just is not the world we live in now. And so I actually really appreciated Antonio's argument there. And really, to me, the argument, I'm getting emotional about it. But really, the argument there is, that this is still a problem, right? Like, I do think there's a huge swath of us that are like, nuclear weapons were a problem during the Cold War, but everything's fine now. And in reality, we have just as many, we have more really, and they're loose and bad actors could get them, and it's way more of a problem. The only way out of it is to get rid of these weapons that could end humanity. It kind of reminds me of the silly ending of Fantastic Four when like the whole world bands together to build giant machines really quickly. It's like that's the kind of like fantasy we need to actually solve this problem. So I don't know that you could do that in this movie. I'm reading the book that is becoming Project Hail Mary the movie next year, and it's kind of got that vibe too. It's like at some point the whole world needs. I'm like, I don't know, that's a step too far.
To quote this, another cinematic classic around the idea of global thermonuclear war, the movie War Games. Strange game. The only winning move is not to play. But that does feel like that's potentially the takeaway. I think to Jen's question, I also want to echo Greg's. I appreciate Antonio's stance on this, and I see the movie that you see, and I appreciate that you don't you just don't have as much problems with like there's issues, but the stuff that's good was so good and was good at was working for me. And I think that's an understandable sort of sliding scale of there's plenty of movies where I've been that guy that's like, who cares? Like, oh, that stuff's bad, but this stuff's good. And I do understand that. But Jen, to your point about like, could there be hope kind of, or could there be like a sort of productive solution? I think once the narrative of the movie decides to be only about these 18 minutes and a little bit of time before, but once it's from launch detected to impact, there's not really space for that. And I respect that they didn't try to make it have some sort of weird didactic moment about just like, you know what, maybe if humanity had just gotten together and had it, like if President Elba was on the in his plane or in his car, ruminating about what society could have done, that would have been less successful than what we already got. So I think that there is something inherently interesting about, we're going to do the thriller, and it also like reflects on a bunch of like 70s political thrillers that because Robert Redford recently passed, there's the Alan J. Pakula trilogy, that's All the President's Men, and Clute and Parallax View, and those are similarly movies, or at least Clute and Parallax View, where it's like, stuff's happening, it's dark, it's bad, how are we going to get out of this? And spoilers for both those movies, you don't. Like, it's just, it goes badly and everyone involved has a bad time, and the powers that be like continue to exist however they were going to exist in that scenario. So it's dark, and I respect they went dark with it, but it also, because of some of the narrative choices that went along with that commitment to, we're not going to get a last minute solution, we're not going to get some sort of like twist, it is just going to be, like it's an impossible reaction to an unfathomably terrible situation. What can you do besides like wish we had never put ourselves in this position, but we have, and now we should probably be thinking about it, and maybe because of this movie do something about it. You don't want that to be too didactic, you also don't want it to be like there in the text, but I don't know how you make that narratively fulfilling without it being, again, like the movies that I think of are like either popcorny or they are just like darkly satirical about humanity and are kind of like, yeah, great, everyone should die, who cares, because we're terrible. And that's not the attitude this movie has, but it's the end result, it seems, of what's likely to happen.
All right, I think we need to do Oscars watch. Although I did want to give a shout out to Moses Ingram. I thought she was very good in this.
Good point.
Her character had nothing to do, but
right,
whatever.
Definitely a character and a plot line that was important. I would like to say one dumb thing, and I don't know if anybody here will care, except maybe Antonio. But Antonio, did you also have the feeling that it would be like an extra bummer for the world to end on the worst sports day of the year? The day after the MLB All-Star game, when nothing could happen. There's no chance anyone could have been distracted by sports. It's the one day of the year that no professional sports happen in America. There's only one day every year, and that's the day. How sad. The last thing anybody
Oscars
watches is an
watch.
All-Star game?
Yeah.
Fuck, bro.
This is a-
Oscars watch.
This is a sports center. What are you doing? All right, so this is another one where I'm embarrassed to say I didn't put it in my hype draft because it wasn't on anyone's radar at that point. I think it was just untitled project by Catherine Bigelow at that time. But I did put it in my Vulture Movies Fantasy League lineup. And now I'm regretting it because, like, is this actually going to do anything this award season? Could it? People were talking about this being automatically a Best Picture at some point, and now I don't think that's the thing. So where are we at with this movie, Oscars wise?
Well, I will say these are terrible metrics, but I will say when Antonio asked, or maybe now I can't remember. We're recording late, folks. One of Greg or Antonio was like, "What do audiences think about this?" The Rotten Tomato scores are not bad. Like they're in the like mid 70s for critics and like higher 70s for the audience. Actually, no, they're both high. They're 78 and 77. Flawed metrics. Metacritic similarly like 75. So like, I think there are people who are mad about it and there's people who are pushing back on it, but it's not like bombing. It's not so to speak. It's not despised. It's not something
or word choice.
Yeah.
It also got a lot of buzz coming out of festivals. Like I had heard that this was a big crowd pleaser, and so I got more excited after festivals, and then was disappointed when I saw it.
You could say it was just like shot right up into the air. It was up in the air for a while, and then it came down, crashing at some destination.
Missed its target.
I could, but I choose not to.
It's smart. So I think it could be that. But I think it's not as strong as it seemed when that initial festival reaction was like, "Holy crap, Bigelow, she's done it!" And folks left that Venice screening like really excited about it, and that suddenly became one of the top 5 Best Picture kind of like locks on a lot of lists. It's down in the muck between 6 and I don't know 17 now. There's like it's with all those other movies where it's going to be fighting for position. But it could happen.
I also think the 3-part structure diminishes all the performances. We've given them a lot of praise. They deserve a lot. But then when you think like, oh, they're not in very much of the movie, you know, that often plays a role in especially like lead categories. So I don't think it's squeaking through on anything, which I mean, I had hoped I wanted to see Bigelow come eat Jim Cameron's lunch again. You know, like I was all for it when I heard the buzz about this, but I don't see it being a player this award season.
I mean, I think it doesn't even have a lead actor. I don't think that I think that if anyone was going to run, I think everyone would be going for supporting. And I think you're probably right that there's, you know, the most dramatic moment in the film is maybe the most ridiculous. The Jared Harris's character, like, you know, jumping off the building. And so like it's just this odd situation where it's probably its best chance for an Oscar nomination is Best Picture. And maybe that's it. Yeah.
I will admit I was at the Pentagon last week, and that's all I could think of was Jared Harris walking off the side of the building.
Oh, no.
That part made me mad too. I was
I will fully admit to being the bad at home. I missed it. I had to rewind to be like, what? I like looked away for a second, and then suddenly everyone's like, huh. And then I was like a couple minutes went by, and I was like, what happened to Jared? What's going on? Like, why are we not coming back to the defense secretary? And then I rewound, and I was like, oh.
He hanged himself on the back of his office door next to a sad little Mets pennant.
But only after he did some bare knuckle boxing style fisticuffs.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I will never. That's my sports reference. I will never forget his sad little Mets pennant, where it's like, "I'm trying to fit in with all of you Americans." Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
But Lindor, he's a hell of a shortstop.
Last question, probably about Oscars watch. What do we think in terms of Netflix throwing their campaign weight at this point? Like, if you're a Netflix executive, like, what are you doing in terms of Oscars campaigning? Because I feel like they're notorious for, I mean, obviously they're very good at getting lots of nominations, but they have to campaign pretty hard to do that, I think. And so there has to be kind of some premeditation there. But they
Right.
also think of the All Quiet on the Western Front. They're also kind of like, well, let's just see what emerges as like a front runner. So what do you think they do here? Because they do have a lot of movies in the mix, some falling, some rising. Looking at you, Frankenstein. Apparently surging. Don't get it.
So it's House of Dynamite, Frankenstein, J. Kelly. What's the fourth? There's a fourth big one.
Train Dreams is the
Train
other one.
Dreams.
Train Dreams.
Which
So
everyone keeps being like, yeah, Train Dreams. Train Dreams is the sleeper. And I'm like, what? Does this movie even exist? Like,
I think right now, based on nothing beyond like trying to track buzz, I would guess that they're like, well, let's see if Train Dreams does it. And they're going to roll out Train Dreams at some point in the next few weeks and get that out there. And then they're going to reset in early December and try to be like, okay, what's happened? Because all of our movies have had ups and they've had downs. Presumably Train Dreams will, if not that it has a down where people don't like it, it will be the like, this is slow and meditative. And if it's anything like the book, it's very kind of weird. And maybe not like a crowd pleaser. So a little bit of a harder sell, but yeah, I think they just kind of push all of it and, see, and maybe J. Kelly catches fire. That hasn't like gotten a wide release yet. And maybe that works, but yeah, I think it's just going to be one of these movies will be primary. Another one will be secondary. Third place is you're fired for across these four movies. And they're
Don't
just
sleep on Wake Up Dead, man. They might
that's true.
they might owe a little push to Ryan and some of that cast.
Glenn Close, best
they also
supporting
have
actress.
a doc that is now in the mix already. The
Neighbor?
Good Neighbor got nominated for Gotham on doc. So they make a lot of schlocky docs, but they actually have good ones as well. It's just sometimes hard to parse them out.
I think that was a Sundance doc that they bought. Like I think
It's quite good.
It was at a festival before, and it came out of that as like this could be it, and it got the Daughters acquisition where like last year the movie Daughters, which I of course drafted in the movie fantasy draft, and I'll never let it go that it didn't get nominated because the documentary people were like, we don't like Netflix, and they just ignored it. So that's a potential issue, but maybe they want to push back on that because it's supposed to be very good, and that could have, if it gets into the 5, it could have a real chance because people can easily watch it and apparently connect with it really, people connect with it once they see it.
I'm just realizing House of Dynamite might actually be able to get an editing nomination because it's like falls into that. It's a lot of editing just based on the structure alone. That branch might be like, we want to reward this, even though everyone else is out on this movie.
I was also wondering if there would be we would start getting emails here in LA around House of Dynamite screenings with the production designer to talk about how accurate it is, reflecting all these places in these hidden rooms and situation areas in Washington, and if they could try for that below the line. But I think ultimately Antonio's right. The most likely one nomination for this movie is Best Picture, which is wild.
Yeah. All right. Well, Oscar season continues. Antonio, thanks for sticking around. For listeners who won't know this otherwise, this is actually our second episode we're recording back to back. So thank you for being here, for sticking it out. Where can folks find you? And I know there's only one place.
Find me on Letterboxd at A Elefano, AELEFANO. Greg, you had to stay up super late, so thank you. Where can folks find you?
Bed. Also on Letterboxd at Ion Cannon, EYEONCANON. PT, you would have been up anyway, but to steal Antonio's joke, you would have been watching an obscure 1950s movie that nobody has ever heard of. So thank you for sacrificing that film viewing. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Letterboxd, logging movies such as that. Although tonight before recording, we rewatched Shaun of the Dead, which is not that obscure and not from the 50s. It was a very good Halloween-y time. You can find me on Letterboxd at PT McNiff, PTMCNIFF. I will also briefly plug, since Greg did mention it earlier, I will be a guest on the Rebel Base Card podcast, talking about one of the episode 3 of season 2 of Andor, part of their slow rewatch, the second breakfast of digging back into that show. It was a lovely conversation. And you can also find me, by the time this comes out, I believe you should be able to find me on the Force Ghost Conversations feed. I joined Andrew over there to talk about Back to the Future. Pretty good movie, celebrating its 40th anniversary right now. So yeah, That's where you can find me. You can find the show, and also on Letterboxd with all of our individual accounts. You can find the show there at LTR Pod. You can find us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at The Long Take Review. You can email us, thelongtakereview@gmail.com. And you can also just subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your shows. Add us to your feed, listen to new episodes. We've got lots of stuff coming your way because it is getting into Oscar season and lots of things are coming out. Jen, where can folks find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Sopchokchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI, or on Letterboxd at Qui-Gon Jen. This isn't insanity. It's reality.